often left with a wound that is difficult to heal. Michael Reuter is one of these people who is an overcomer. And so I want to talk about his story. One thing that interested me when I heard his story is that he's got something that was very similar to my own in my past. And so I felt like this kindred spirit with him, with his story. He's got a fascinating story that begins with the horror of finding his uncle, who was also his best friend, murdered. Then his mental health struggle started from there. He was almost 2 years sober, but still struggling with mental illness, PTSD, depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, etc. But through a long and traumatic journey, Michael found himself suffering alone in the darkness and not really finding a way out. But now he inspires others to get out of the darkness and end their suffering in silence. He's an entertainer wannabe, speaker, creator, mental health awareness advocate, and against all odds, a successful entrepreneur. So welcome, Michael.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. So when I heard your story, so I'm understanding that you're the successful business person, but your passion is really helping people, which you have this passion story, and on the side, you are creating a documentary about your journey.
Yeah. So I've been creating a documentary for about a year now, I'd say. And I guess to kind of give you some background to start, help the audience understand a little bit better. I'm in a real estate, title, and escrow business. So I really, I'm interested. I love business. I love helping people. I love growing. I love making money. But, I found this really strong, desire and passion, through my journey and what I've been through. And I assume, a lot of the reason why you and your husband are where you are is because you were kind of drawn to help other people through the journey that you went through, right? So I had this strong, I don't know, it's like a magnet. It's like, and I still can't put my finger on it. If it was I need to create my pain, make a purpose for it, there's a reason for all of it. There's something bigger than myself with all this, and I think a lot of that's what helped get me out of the darkness and kind of into the light. And then from there, I just kind of had a natural ability, I believe, to help other people, whether it's to overcome trauma or obstacles or problems in life. I'm really drawn to helping people when they have grief, especially through traumatic deaths of loved ones and things like that. So I would meet with people individually, come to me, and I saw it just getting bigger and bigger, and I just wanted to do something with it. So I have a really good mentor and friend of mine here in Baltimore. I'm based out of Baltimore City. His name is Ralph. He actually was a writer on the first 3 seasons of HBO The Wire with David Simon.
Yeah.
And so him, and then the production team, Richard Yeagley is the producer on it. So we've been creating a documentary about my life. I guess kind of starts from the moment I found my uncle murdered, tells my history sort of through archival footage, FBI interviews, family interviews, pictures, videos, all kinds of things like that. And then the second part of it is shot in the now, verite. So it's showing my life, sort of tells the trauma and the past and the road I was going down. And then it goes to what I've been doing ever since I was kind of able to stop suffering silence, reach out, ask for help, and try to inspire and give other people hope. In that moment when you're life's over, this happened to me, that happened to me, this person passed. I mean, I remember being in those places, caught in that web, using suicidal thoughts to fantasize about, to know there's a way out of this. I could never imagine that I could be myself again and be happy. I never thought that would be possible. And now where I'm in life, it's I'm drawn to just kind of pull people and just show them you can't put anyone there, but you can give them the hope. It is possible. I promise you it's possible. I was where you are, and I want to help you get to where I am and where hopefully I'm going.
Yeah, no, I love that you're doing a documentary on your life that helps people. And I think I mentioned I was drawn to your story because I also had a murdered uncle. Well, I mean, it's a weird reason to be drawn to someone, but I was took my attention. Yeah. So it was a little different because my understanding is you actually saw your uncle murdered, or you found him rather. I didn't find my uncle, but I was 4 years old, so I remember just the screaming and the police, and it was just a big mess. And I remember my mother and my grandmother falling to the floor. But in your case, you actually found your uncle. I mean, is that something you're willing to walk us through?
Yeah. So it's not, it was the reason that I will like to walk you through it. And I never know how it's going to be when I do, but the reason I like to now is because for so long, like, the reason I think the post-traumatic stress disorder and the suffering and the pain and the mental illness was so bad was because, like, I just blocked all of that out. Like, that never happened, you know? And I put drugs and alcohol in front of it and whatever I could do to make it like that wasn't real. And I started getting better when I did address that, you know, the fact that this really did happen. Like, there's really pain, there's really trauma. Like, you know, it happened. So what happened was him and I had a jewelry store together. He moved from Texas to Baltimore. We were together every day. We were best friends. And not to go into the crime part of the story, because we would be here for days. It's crazy because it is my story. That part of the story is it is entertaining. I mean, but it's crazy. It's like a movie. It is the craziest story. But that part side of it, long story short, we were set up. It was Christmas evening. We had we had an appointment the next day, the day after Christmas. So Christmas night, I picked him up with my sister. We went over to my uncle's house. This was my father's brother. So I went over to my other uncle's house, my mother's brother, picked up my Uncle Wayne, my sister and I went over there. We had dinner, Christmas, celebrating, having a good time. And I kissed everyone goodbye and I left. And I went out to my girlfriend's house at the time. So that day after Christmas, I was supposed to go meet my uncle at the store for a meeting. I went home and took a nap instead. When I woke up from that nap, I called him several times. He didn't answer. So around 4 or 5 o'clock, I drove out to our store to find him. When I got to the store, I like lit up because I was always so excited to see him. And I saw his car there. And he didn't have a computer at home or anything. So he liked to play poker at the store or whatever. So I figured, you know, his phone must have died, whatever. He's at the store playing poker or something. So I go in the store. When I got to, you kind of go down these stairwell and open up the storefront. And my heart just sunk, like, because I saw the computer screen was off. And we had pictures on the wall and some casings, you know, glass casings, jewelry and things like that. And everything was kind of shattered and broken. And I kept going further towards the back of the store. And the further back I got, I remember vividly noticing like bullet shells, you know, a casing of bullets, glass everywhere. And then that's when the carpet goes from like a bluish mesh color to, you know, just red. And it was a deep, dark red. That's a lot where the trauma comes from, is that the stuff images I can't get out of my head, but that red mixed in with that blue. And then, you know, ultimately I went to the back, the person had drug him back there. And that's where I found him laying there, face down. He had 10 shots in his head and 5 shots in his body. So I got down on my knees. I turned around, I held his face on my lap. And that's where the trauma really comes from real bad, that moment right there. And then from that moment, you know, I put him back down and I went and grabbed our gun and I ran around and I looked everywhere and it kind of unfolded from there. The police came and then the story goes on and on and on and on.
So you already said you sort of went into an addiction phase because of trying to block that out. What did you do to treat the PTSD? You know, how did you finally treat it?
So at first I treated it myself, and anyone listening, this is what I say to people is like, first I drank, you know, I was a social drinker in college and growing up and I liked to party. I liked to have a good time. So I drank, and after my uncle was killed, I started drinking to a different level. You know, it was like just numb myself. Like I didn't want to be alive. I didn't want to think. Yeah. If I was, I needed to be numb. And then drinking wasn't enough. So I got into cocaine and other drugs, mostly cocaine and alcohol, but the drinking to keep me going and keep me numb, and the cocaine kept me sharp and kept me doing whatever I wanted to do. And it was bad. I mean, and it just gets progressively worse. Like you think you can I could never imagine, I'm telling you, ever thinking I was going to become like an addict, right? Or an alcoholic. Like I never would have thought that. And they say it can happen to anyone. Like it can happen to anybody, especially if you're using it to like hide something else. Yeah. And it just got a hold of me, and it was like I needed it to survive. Like I thought I did. I truly did, because I knew once I got rid of that, then I had to face this stuff, you know? So I eventually, you know, I didn't even really notice it for a long time. I kind of just was abusive with alcohol and drugs and kind of tried to go about my life until years and years and years and years went by. And then more trauma occurred. You know, my father's death and a lot of my grandparents died right after him.
So it starts stacking. We call that stacking.
Yeah. And that's when like the whole self-victim, I was playing victim.
Yeah.
how could this happen to me? How could that happen to me? I'm doomed. You're waiting for what's going to happen next, right? Instead of living. And then anything bad that happens, you're just hurting yourself more, going deeper and darker. That's what I try to warn people about now. Like the drinking and the numbing or the drugging or whatever you're doing unhealthy to not deal with your pain and your trauma and your suffering. Like you have to, here's the analogy I tell people. You're digging yourself a deeper ditch, right? And you're going further down into a hole and further down into a hole. And when you want to finally try to get better and be better, you got to climb to the surface, which is real hard to get back up there. For me, it was getting rid of the drugs and the alcohol and go day by day and climb up to the surface. And then from there, you can start to finally work on yourself. But getting back.
Did you go to AA? Did you go to therapy? Did you see a psychiatrist?
It was unique how it really happened. After my father passed, his father died, then my other grandmother died, then my other grandfather. So my dad's dad died right after him. Then my mom's mom died right after her. Then my dad's mom died right after her. So 3 of them in a row right after my father. He buried all them. Then that was 2016. Then I was working with the FBI and the United States Attorney's Office to help convict the person who killed my uncle because I knew him. We met a bunch of times. That's a whole other story, like I said before. So I promised myself, like, I need to be strong and, like, help these people. I need to get justice for my family. Like, I promised my father on his deathbed, like, I will get justice for Uncle Wayne, right? So So I just stopped. Like, I just stopped on willpower alone. And I went a whole year up until the date when I had to face this monster in a courtroom and he was finally convicted of my uncle's murder. And willpower alone was enough with those things driving me, like with knowing like that I got to do this for my uncle and my dad and my family members, and I got to carry this on my shoulders. Every day I wanted to drink, I wanted to get high every day, but I wouldn't do it because I knew I had this mission. After that ended, like that day when he was finally convicted of my uncle's murder, I started drinking and using again. I thought it was fine. It was all behind me, but then again, I didn't have a purpose in life anymore. And then it was even worse than it was before.
Sort of like soldiers when they're at war. And then the war ends, they're dead on purpose.
Yeah, and my brother says that. He was like, man, I knew what Michael saw. Like, I know most people never are going to come back from that. Mm-hmm. And he said, that's what he says. My brother's name is Sean. He's like, Michael had a purpose and this and that was taken from him. And it was like, what do you do now? And my family was scooping me up all the time and trying, I was making excuses and I was in a bad place. In real life, though, I was functioning. People thought I was doing great. My business was running. Which was even harder because you're acting, which is very, very difficult to portray someone when inside you're just miserable and suffering. So finally, I did. I went and got professional help. I was like, all right, I need help. I actually ended up in the hospital, and that's when I was kind of scared for my life at that point. And I went to
your rock bottom had a basement. You hit the basement.
Yeah, I did. Well, I woke up in the hospital bed, and I stayed in the hospital bed. I was like, I'm gonna do whatever it takes to become myself again. Like, enough's enough. Like, whatever it takes, I'm gonna do it. So in the hospital, I was still pretty messed up. The next day, they suggested I go to this place called Ashley Dixon Treatment Center. It's in Haverty Grace, Maryland. I think it's a pretty famous. His name was Father Martin, pretty famous guy in the sober world. Have you heard of him before?
I have not. My husband has, but I haven't.
Yeah, so I went there and I tell people, like, I loved it. It was awesome. It was like the best. I went for 2 weeks. You're supposed to go for 30 days. And I was like, I'm only coming for 2 weeks. I got a business to run and I wanted to stay really when I was there. I thought it was like summer camp. I loved it. There was working out and there was classes and I was there to work on myself. I didn't have a phone. I didn't have a computer. I didn't have to talk to anybody except for the people there. Did
you actually get something out of it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I loved it. Did it work?
I loved it. I want to go. I tell my family all the time I want to go back now because I'm on the phone and the computer all the time, work and calls, whatever. But that's all away. So all you're working on is yourself, right? It's like it teaches you.
That's why I love seminars. I mean, it's not quite the same thing, but I love seminars because you're there, no distractions, and you're working on stuff, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're totally right. And when someone, like, I was looking at your Instagram page and your website and stuff, and a lot of the things that you and your husband do, people get in because it's like an escape, and it's sort of a guidance for them. It's like, oh my gosh, when something clicks, sort of like if someone's listening to your content or your new book that's coming out it's for eating, right? Healthy eating.
So that most of I've done 9 cookbooks and lifestyle guides. This new one coming out is called The Relentless Courage of a Scared Child. It's a memoir, and it was my cathartic way of healing the past, which I've already done all the therapy. Actually, this was more of a way actually to show other people. It's about overcoming,
right?
And so yeah.
But that's what I mean, when somebody finds you and your content and stuff, that's like you can escape everything else. It's same what rehab was to me. I found somewhere where there were people that were guiding me, and it was all about me, right? I didn't have to talk about it. I could talk about things I never was able to talk about before. I was there for a purpose and for a reason. And as crazy it sounds to say, everyone else is so screwed up just as much as you are, right? And not have, like, I mean, I would tell my story there and people, the jaws would drop, right? Right. But at the same time, a lot of people that are hurting for a lot of bad things that have happened to them, and in the real world, they're losers, or they're nobodies, or they're just lost causes or whatever. But in that place, that safe space together, everyone's somebody, everyone's something important. You know, nobody really asks to end up there. Nobody says, I want to end up in this rehab one day. I'm going to need some serious help. But if you do have to go there, like I like to get rid of that stigmatism that rehab is a bad word and addiction is a bad word.
Oh, absolutely. That's what our whole goal, our mission is, to get rid of the word mental illness. Right. It's ridiculous. We need to.
I don't know what else to use, but I'm not as versed in this, you know, this topic in this area as you are, obviously. But what do you say to people? Because
oh, you are. It's just personal for you. We do it professionally. When people are submerged in it, you know, I've got family members I had an uncle who was murdered because of a drug deal. And so drug deal gone wrong. When you're the one in it, it's just a very different perspective than when you're the one that's the healer, correct? Right. So, yeah, it's pretty wild. One question I have for you, did you know you had PTSD, or did you think you were normal? Because I know for me, my husband, like, I would tell my story, like, I'm like, it's just everybody's messed up. Like, everybody's messed up, and mine's not different than other people. I'm garden variety, you know, all American dysfunctional like everybody else. And he would just look at me, he looked at me and his jaw hit the table, and he's like, my husband's a psychiatrist. That's hard to make happen. So he's like, yeah, no, that's not garden variety anything, honey. But it's a survival mechanism that you make yourself normal, like everybody else is like that. Yeah. Even though they're not.
And I'm not laughing I'm laughing because I can relate so much to it, because it's, you do that. It's a defense mechanism. I mean, I'm
fallible, insecure, neurotic, and emotional, but I'm fine.
I wanted people to think I was fine, and I wanted to convince myself I was fine as well. So for years, I didn't know it. I mean, I constantly was having these, I describe them to people now as post-traumatic stress disorder. Like I have like severe attacks. And they can, you know,
shut down from the anxiety.
And triggers will happen, and it can build up in a number of different ways. I didn't really know it until I thought it was just how I was. So, and a lot of the times when I was using drugs and alcohol, I was dehydrated, I was weak, and they were coming on so much more severe and so much more often because of that. When I quit that and I was able to work on myself and get healthy and start eating right and working out and living a healthy lifestyle, I still had post-traumatic stress disorder, but it was just less frequently. So I thought I was healed and I was doing better. Until very recently, I didn't even seek to work on that. I mean, I just got a trauma therapist for the first time like 2 months ago. And that's been opening, you know, some really wonderful doors for me, because I finally decided I was like, everything's going well in my life. I'm here at the beach, I told you, with my family. I got my beautiful nieces and my siblings and my mother here, and life is just beautiful. My business is booming. Everything's great. But I'm like, I've realized that, like, I was always seeking to do something to change myself for the better when something bad happened or when I was against a wall. And I'm like, I kind of realized, like, I still have really bad attacks. Like, why don't I go seek out why and try to make it better instead of waiting for something crippling to happen?
It's funny, we talk a lot about, we do a lot of grief stuff with our, you know, clinics, and on our podcast, we just recently did one. And one thing we tell people often, for some bizarre reason, when people are going through grief, they think that it's noble or like they should wait to get treatment. And so they'll always ask us, well, how long should I wait after someone dies or after a traumatic event to get therapy? And I'm a trauma nurse, and I'm like, how long would you wait if you broke your arm? You go right away, right? But
Mm-hmm.
people don't see it that way. And so they sort of think that they're supposed to suffer through it. And that's just not true. You should start the process right away. One form of therapy that is amazing, and I don't know if you've heard of it yet, but if not, I would love to just throw it out there, and maybe you already have. It's called EMDR, eye movement reprocessing desensitization. And so it's a form of therapy that's specific to PTSD. And I have to tell you, it was like amazing for me.
Really?
There's so many people who are like, they don't even understand really why it works so well, because you don't have to sit there and talk for years. It's a way of actually reprocessing where trauma gets stuck in your brain. So by bilateral movements. And so it's really interesting.
I've looked up, I've looked up everything just like, over the years, make me better, fix me, right? I mean, at this point, I don't even I look at it, I don't even need to be fixed.
You don't.
Look, I would take everything back and be an alcoholic right now if my uncle and my father were downstairs with the rest of my family in a heartbeat. But of where I am, and I wouldn't be where I am without the pain and the trauma and all this stuff, and I used to want to fit in and be normal, but now I don't want to be normal. I want to be, not just ordinary, but I want to be extra special. I want to be unique. I want to be able to help other people. I have this extreme fire and burning inside of me. And it's because of what I've been through that's forced me to be who I am today. So, I don't think I'm not searching for a way just to wake up every day and be able to live my life. There's a reason why I push so hard, and I'm so passionate about, what I do in life, and, where I want to be, and the people I love and the people I want to help. So it's not even necessarily fixing the post-traumatic stress attacks for me are really scary. I had one recently where I was eating an acai bowl mixed with the berries, and it was the bluish blueberry color and the reddish, it looked a bit of the berry looked like blood mixed into the carpet. I had been experiencing some anxiety, and I could see that carpet of when I found my uncle from all those years before. And I had this crazy, I was scared of the world. I was 10 minutes from my house with my girlfriend. We have to go home. I was dry heaving, basically throwing up. And I had to throw away the acai. I couldn't even look at it. And I'm like, are you scared to go home? She's like, what do you mean? We're 10 minutes up the road. I'm like, aren't you scared of the world right now? You get so scared. You need to get to a safe place. After I experience it, I feel like I'm going to die. Everything in my life, I'm discombobulated. I can't form, sentences correctly. Everything that you think could go wrong or go bad in your life, you start assuming the worst of everything. Coronavirus. I love my mother so much. She's 70. What if she caught it today? She was out somewhere. I know it. And you just
that sounds like a panic attack. Yeah.
Panic mixed with post-traumatic stress. And my therapist told me this. He said, post-traumatic stress or stress, anxiety, whatever, is what a lot of people have. It's when it limits your ability to live a regular life. And I said, well, I have to pull off the road sometimes and this and that.
Right. And that's why we would say to get treatment, because you'll never forget it. You're never going to forget what happened to you. But being able to not have it control you, but you control it, so that you can use that pain for purpose. Right. So that, that would be the reason to sort of be able to bring it in.
You say it much better than I do. That's exactly. I like the pain because I like using it for a purpose. I want to be someone special in this world that helps.
You just don't want it to control you, though, right?
Exactly. But I don't want it to control me, no. Because it's scary. It definitely is. And to have that gift. However, my sobriety is threatened when I have those attacks, panic attacks, anxiety attacks, depression, post-traumatic stress triggers, things like that. Right. And that's when you want to just take it and make it go away. It's a quick fix, but I know how dark of a road that can lead down. So it's hard. That's the big challenge for me. I'm coming up on 2 years sober now.
Congratulations. No, it's thank you for sharing your story. That's a very powerful and very obviously dramatic story. And I think when you share your story, pain shared is pain divided. So when other people are able to hear it, and that's one of the reasons I wrote mine, wasn't just as a catharsis for me, but when other people hear it. One woman came up to me at a convention and she said, I was with my husband, who lots of people know him, not as many people know me. And so I was just waiting. What's that?
I said it looks like they do from looking you guys up. You have also.
Oh, thank you. And so, but I was waiting for him. He just got off stage. He was speaking, and there were 3,500 people in the room he was speaking to, and so he had a line of people he was signing books for, and I was waiting. And this woman came up to me and she said, "I was hoping you'd be here." And I said, "Oh yeah, we're here." I thought she meant us as a couple, and she's like, "No, you." And I said, "Me." And she was from, I forget where in Africa, but she was from somewhere in Africa. And she said, I have been following you and I've read everything that you've written and I've been following everything you do because I always think to myself, if she can do it, I can do it. She said, "I pray every day that God will do for my life what he did for yours." And she's like, "And if you can do it, I can do it." And she's crying. And I'm like, but I haven't even said that much about my life yet. Like, she knew very little about the craziness, right? And so that's when it hit me that I should not have the, like, I used to think I shouldn't say anything about my past, really. And then I'm like, why shouldn't I say anything about my past? Pain shared is being divided, and it inspires other people to heal.
So during the documentary, I had I had some stages set up, and the second part of the documentary I was hoping to be done by now was basically me going on some stages and telling my story in person in real live audiences, right? And I was kind of testing things too to see what I could get away with, like who actually cares, like will I help people, like will it help me, right? And coronavirus hit, so I released a video on social media instead, basically just telling my story. Within like, and it's all filmed within the documentary, you know, kind of shows we pivot, and I released some on social media instead. Within like 2 days, that video got several 100,000 views, and the shares and the likes and the messages I was getting, unbelievable. It was the most unbelievable response of anything I've ever done. And there was one message though that was separated from all the rest. And I don't know who else was thinking this, or all the, like that woman you said that came up to you. How many other people are at home watching your stuff you've unpacked you're never going to know about, you know? So I got one message. This person said that they don't, you say, "You don't know me. I have to write to you. It's very deep. I'm sorry to get emotional with you. I watched your speech on Facebook. And I was going to kill myself on my 20-something whatever birthday. And your speech gave me the power to open up and go talk to people I needed to and tell my family I just want to thank you." And like that kind of message, I taken back, like a tidal wave hit me. Like, oh my gosh, like what?
You never know who you're going to touch. It's amazing. And so I commend you for doing your documentary, because you just don't know who you're going to touch. So before we close, I just want to tell people where to find you. You can find Michael on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Michael Andrew Ruder, R-U-D-E-R. And you know, if you're struggling with the results of trauma, PTSD, anxiety, depression, addiction, it sounds like you like to chat with people. We also have therapists, EMDR therapists, and physicians. If you're having, you know, thoughts of hurting yourself or someone else, please reach out. There's, you know, people who are willing to help, and the number you can call is 844-818-0616. And I just am so grateful to you for what you do, Michael, and thank you for being here.
I'm so grateful for you inviting me on and giving me this this channel to be able to speak and be a part of your show. I truly am. And I look, I've watched what you guys do. I know before you were doing more doctors and stuff. I think it's great. You were a regular person. Now you're an extraordinary.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart.